The room was quieter than he expected. That was the first thing. Not peaceful, not relieved. Quiet in a way that had weight to it. A specific unfamiliar weight he had not accounted for. When he was planning the leaving, he had imagined silence as an absence, a subtraction, something lighter than what came before. What he found was not lighter. What he found was a silence that knew exactly what shape it was missing. That held the outline of her in every room he moved through. That refused, completely, quietly, without drama, to feel the way he had promised himself it would feel. He chose this. He built this. He walked into it with both eyes open. And what psychology reveals about what lives inside a man in the silence after he walks away from someone he truly loved is something he will spend years not saying out loud. This is what that silence holds. Finally spoken, for the first time. Men who leave real love do not talk about what comes after. Not because the silence is empty, because it is so full, it has no language yet. Psychology shows us that men are far more likely to internalize grief than externalize it. And when the grief belongs to a loss they chose, the internalization becomes almost total, almost sealed. He will not post about it. He will not call anyone. He will not say her name in a way that opens the door to what the saying would cost him, but he feels it. He has always felt it. What this is going to do is go inside that silence and name precisely what he has been carrying without permission to put it down. In the first hours, there is something that feels like exhaling. He calls it clarity. He calls it right decision. He moves through the first evening with a lightness in his chest that he mistakes for confirmation, for the body's agreement, that the mind made the correct call. Psychology calls this cognitive dissonance reduction. When a person overrides a deep emotional attachment to make a difficult choice, the brain does not simply accept the discomfort of that contradiction. It resolves it. It manufactures a sensation that resembles peace, that mimics the settling of something finally decided. But this sensation has a signature. Psychology shows us this with precise and uncomfortable clarity. The signature of real peace is that it deepens, it expands, it grows more certain. The longer you stand inside it, what he is feeling does not deepen. It sits at the surface with the specific thinness of something that is covering something else, something heavier, something that has not arrived yet, something that is even now, in the first hours, already on its way. He does not know this yet. He breathes. He sleeps. He tells himself the lightness is real. He thought the silence would feel like space. What it actually felt like was shape, the exact shape of everything she used to fill. She arrives the way she always did, without announcement, not in the moments he was guarding, in the ones he wasn't. A Wednesday afternoon, with no occasion for her, a smell that has nothing to do with anywhere they ever went, and everything to do with her. The particular quality of light at a specific hour, an hour that before her was just an hour, and now belongs entirely to the feeling of having known her. Neuroscience calls this neurochemical withdrawal. When a genuine emotional bond forms, the brain does not merely register it as a pleasant experience. It responds with structural changes, with oxytocin, with dopamine, with serotonin, not as mood effects, but as architectural rewiring of the brain's attachment circuitry. These pathways do not close when the relationship ends. They remain, dormant, waiting, and when something triggers them, a smell, an hour, a song through a speaker in a place she has never been. What he experiences is not memory, it is the body recognizing an absence. It was chemically structured to receive his presence. He picks up his phone, he holds it, he puts it down in the space between the impulse and the decision to do nothing with it. Something moves through him that he cannot name and will not tell anyone about. Psychology names it for him. Disenfranchised grief. Grief with no social permission. Grief that has no right to be spoken because the loss was authored entirely by the person carrying it. He cannot grieve her openly. He left. The story, in every version anyone else would tell, makes him the one who chose to close the door. So he has no one to call, no way to say what the Wednesday afternoon light is doing to him. No language that does not require him to first confess that he is the reason the language is needed. The grief lives entirely inside him, unnamed, unacknowledged, eating him quietly in the silence of his own making. The silence he gave her was not the absence of feeling. It was feeling with nowhere left to go. He tries, not loudly, never loudly. He tries the way a man tries. When he does not want to admit he is trying to replace something he should not have given up. Quietly, with plausible deniability, one new conversation at a time. new conversations that feel promising for 20 minutes and then flatten into something that is completely acceptable and entirely wrong. New presences that are warm in a general way and incapable somehow of being warm in the specific way that mattered. Psychology identifies this as emotional substitution failure, and it arrives as part of something called the contrast effect, the way the brain, after genuine emotional connection, cannot reset to neutral. It sets that connection as the baseline, the reference point, the standard against which every new experience will be measured without his permission or awareness. Not aggressively, not obviously, quietly, continuously, one comparison at a time. What she gave him was not general. That is the thing. The contrast effect forces him to understand one failed replacement at a time. It was specific to the particular quality of her presence, the way she held what he said after he said it, not rushing to fix it, not immediately translating it into something more comfortable, just holding it, the way she looked at him when he was not performing, when he was uncertain, when he was honest, when he was the version of himself that only existed when he trusted someone enough to let it exist. That cannot be replicated, not because no one else is capable, because that version of it was made of her, of exactly who she was, and specific things cannot be replaced. They can only be recognized too late, as irreplaceable. He was not looking for her specifically. He was looking for what she made him feel, and slowly, without announcing itself, the understanding arrived. Those two things were the same. It does not come as a storm. He almost wishes it would. A storm would be fast. A storm would be loud enough to carry its own explanation. A storm would have a beginning and an end and something to show for itself when it passed. What comes instead is a Tuesday, an ordinary Tuesday, with no scheduled significance, no anniversary, no occasion. Just a Tuesday evening that arrives with the full weight of everything he has been looking at sideways for months. Psychology calls this effective forecasting failure. Human beings are consistently, profoundly, and sometimes devastatingly poor at predicting how they will feel in the future. He imagined the silence. He calculated its cost. He stood in front of the decision and determined with some confidence that the thing he was giving up was manageable to give up. What he could not have known, what no person can know, because the human mind cannot simulate what it has not yet lived, is what the giving up would actually feel like from the inside of it. From the inside, the silence is not freedom. From the inside, the silence is the most precise record he has ever encountered of everything she was. He begins on that Tuesday to understand the difference between what he walked away from and what he walked away into. The first was real. The second was a story, one he had told himself. So many times, it had started to feel like fact. He understands now what he could not understand. When she was still present, she was not just someone he loved. She was the standard, the emotional reference point, the person against whom everything that came after would be measured, quietly, privately, without mercy. Some things only reveal their full value from the outside. He is on the outside now, permanently, completely, without a way back that does not cost him more than he is sure he can pay. He did not lose her the day he walked away. He lost her in every conversation that followed, which almost reached something and then didn't. In every moment that was nearly as good and therefore unbearably not. In every evening that was fine, just fine. In every hour that asked nothing of him and gave nothing back and reminded him, without saying it, what fine feels like. When you have known something that was not. He knows what going back would require.
He has rehearsed it.
Not consciously, but in the way the mind rehearses the things it will not let itself act on. The same scenario, the same opening sentence, the same moment of having to stand in front of her as the version of himself who was wrong. Psychology calls the force that holds him in place ego-protective behavior. It operates through attribution theory, the way the mind constructs a narrative around a significant decision and then defends that narrative the way it would defend something essential. The version of him who left had a reason. He needed that reason to be sufficient Returning would require him to stand in front of the reason and say, "It wasn't. You weren't. I was wrong about the most significant choice I made in the time I knew you." For many men, this is not a humiliation. The architecture of their ego is built to absorb. There is also something psychology calls sunk cost in identity. The longer he has held the identity of a man who made that choice and stood by it, the higher the cost of admitting the choice was a mistake. Pride in this context is not arrogance. It is not cruelty. It is the wall a man builds to protect the version of himself that made the choice. Because to dismantle the wall is to dismantle the story, and to dismantle the story is to stand in the rubble of something he built. To feel less afraid, leaving took a single moment of decision. Going back would require the dismantling of every story he told himself about why leaving was right. And some men would rather live inside a wrong story than face the cost of rewriting it. She has not left him. This is the thing about the kind of love that rewires rather than merely visits. It does not leave when the person leaves. It stays. Neuroscience confirms this without sentimentality. Emotionally significant experiences are not stored the way ordinary memories are stored. They are encoded into the structural architecture of the brain itself, into the neural pathways that govern how warmth is recognized, how safety is recognized, how the feeling of being genuinely known is recognized. Psychology calls this neural imprinting. She is not in his memory the way last Tuesday's lunch is in his memory. She is in the structure of how his nervous system now knows love when it encounters it, how it knows warmth, how it knows the specific feeling of someone seeing the real version and staying anyway. She lives in the particular slant of evening light that still carries her frequency in songs that belong to her now, completely, permanently, without appeal, in moments of joy that arrive with a slight shadow, not because he cannot feel joy, but because the person he most wants to tell about it is the one he chose to lose. He has not forgotten her, not because he is weak, not because he is still in love, in any way he would admit, but because the human brain does not erase what it recognized as real. It holds it, not as nostalgia, as calibration, as the permanent record of what genuine connection feels like, so that everything else can be measured against it for the rest of his life. The silence he created was never empty. He filled it without trying, without being able to stop, with everything he walked away from, and it has been full of her ever since. Here is what psychology confirms, and what he will almost certainly never say out loud. A man who walks away from someone he truly loved does not find peace in the silence he made. He finds her in it. Every quiet room carries her shape. Every experience that should have replaced her became instead another piece of evidence that she could not be replaced. The silence he imagined would feel like freedom became the most undeniable record of everything she was, and everything he was not yet ready to be the kind of man who deserved her. His silence was never proof he felt nothing. It was the most complete evidence of how much he felt and how unprepared he was to stay inside it. And now, this is for you, the one who stayed, the one who did not close the door, the one who held what was real, while someone else decided they could not hold it with her. What you carried in his silence deserves to be named, not softened, not reframed before it is acknowledged, named. The weight of loving someone who withdrew without explanation, the specific cost of remaining present in a connection that was being quietly, silently taken back, the particular cruelty of a goodbye that never announced itself as one, that simply became, over time, an absence where someone used to be. That was real, that weight was real, and it belongs to you, not as something to carry forever, but as something that deserves first to be seen. His leaving was never a verdict on your worth. Psychology is direct about this, clear in a way that should be stated directly. People do not leave because the person they are leaving is not extraordinary. They leave because they are not yet capable of receiving something extraordinary without being overwhelmed by the size of it. His fear was never your problem. His ceiling was never your floor, and you were never required to make yourself smaller to fit inside the limits of what he was ready for. You did not lose. Because you loved too much. You did not lose. Because you were too present, too real, too honest, too willing to be fully seen by someone who was not yet brave enough to be fully seen in return. You lost because he was not yet built for the kind of love you were offering. That is not a flaw in what you gave. It is a limitation in what he could receive. And those two things are not even close to the same thing. You deserve someone who does not need the silence to teach him what you are. Someone who does not require the loss of you, the failed replacements, the quiet Tuesday reckonings in a room where you are not to understand what was standing in front of him. All along, you deserve someone who looks at you clearly, completely, without the fog of fear or unreadiness, and stays, not after, not eventually, before the silence, before the absence does the teaching. Someone who already knows. His silence was never proof that you were not enough. It was proof that he had not yet become enough to deserve what you were offering him. And those two things could not be more different. If something in this reached the part of you that has been waiting for an honest answer, please like this video, not as a favor, as an agreement that something true was finally said here. And subscribe, because this channel exists for the people who feel deeply and deserve to understand exactly why. You are not alone in what you carried. You never have to be.